Hi, this is Sean with Sean Techs and Products. Right here, I'm going to go over all the stuff that you need to relocate the power box up here into this remote box to fit it underneath the radiator. So this is how the winch is when it comes out of the box. And I'm going to go by step how to remove all the electronics and everything to relocate it to that box. All right, so the first step is to remove this little cover box right here on the left, and it's a T20, Torx 20. Anyway, there's just two screws to hold it down. Loosen those up, and then this cover will come off, and that will gain you access to the 6 bolts over here that you have to remove. And then the next step will be to remove this. So we've already removed the cover. Now the next step is to loosen these 6 nuts that send the power from the box to the motor. I'm using a 13 millimeter. It's probably half an inch, but 13 will work because that's what I have. So we're going to remove all 6 of these bolts. Okay, next step is have the 6 nuts removed, and then you're going to go ahead and remove these copper contact points. And then the next step after that will be to remove this box.
Go.
So now that you've removed the 6 nuts, we're going to take this top electronics box off. There's these 4 Torx screws in the corners. You want to loosen those out all the way, and then this will free this to come all the way up and then on to the next step.
Go.
All right, for the next step, we're going to, there's 4 Torx T30s on the bottom down here. We're going to loosen these up, which holds this bracket in, and then it also holds this bottom plate in that comes up. Careful with all the wires in there. And for the next step, we're going to remove the rest of this. Okay, for the next step, we're going to relocate the switch and the plug. There's a Phillips head, so just take those 2 Phillips screws out. And then underneath the side, that's where we're going to be careful with the wires because you're going to have to pull them through. So if you want to take a picture, now would be a good time to take a picture of the wiring in case you have to disconnect anything. The ones for the switch usually just unplug, and then you'll be able to slide the switch out. They might have little locking pins on them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But as for the rest of these, you'll have to unclip them to bring the wires through to the other side. So it's pretty much easier just to disconnect all the wires. So go ahead and take a picture so you can keep track of where all the wires go. And these have little locking clips underneath, so you can use a flathead or something underneath. If you kind of slide it, the top ones came off. The bottom ones, if you kind of slide something underneath, it kind of helps push it in the pin, and then you can usually pull it back out and slide it out. So there is a little locking retaining clip underneath to help slide these off. And the same with these up here. Yeah, still dealing with this box, but basically remove the electronics. You're going to have to take this nut off also, which is a 12 millimeter. Like I mentioned before, just take pictures, keep track of all the wires, because you're going to have to relocate them after you get it apart. It's not as daunting as it seems. Once you actually get it open, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, we have the hand plug removed from the housing up there. We have the switch, just got the little clips on the side you just push in. You got the receiver box for the wireless receiver. I took off the main power lead off, that's over here also. And now we're gonna loosen up the rest of these 3 nuts and then these top 2 Phillips screws to get the heavy duty relay off so we can relocate it. Okay, now we have everything out, and we're going to relocate it into the supplied box. First thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and put the relay in first. There's some nuts at the bottom holding it that I will supply, and some Allen heads that I will also supply also to help hold it in place. Okay, now we have the high voltage relay installed. And now we're going to move over the wireless receiver, all the switches and everything else into the location inside the box. It's probably easier to put the switch in first since it's down lower, and then the wires can guide through there. So you can connect them to the terminals if you want beforehand and then slide them down. Next, I'm going to slide the receiver box in. It goes in that little cubby up here. It's a snug fit, so it stays in place. So you just kind of wiggle it, push it down a little bit, and it'll stay in place. It's designed to be snug. That way it stays in, and you don't have to worry about it flipping out, and there's nothing else it needs. But just kind of wiggle it back and forth. When it doesn't want to go anymore, then you know it's in place. So I went ahead and attached the red wire back to the switch down here, and I'm going to feed the main power switch for the receiver in through the hole. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the switch in. It's got the notch cut out up top. It makes it easy to just kind of drop the wires through if you need to pull it out later on while it's plugged in. And you're gonna reuse the same Phillips head screws that you took out earlier to hold it in to the side of the box. So go ahead and attach that in there, tighten it down, and then we'll go into the wiring next. Okay, we have everything mounted as far as for the connector and the switch and all that. Now we just need to go ahead and connect the wires back up for all the wireless receiver and stuff. Okay, we have all the clipped wires back on. Be careful when you go later on to put the cover on, because all these wires, they're in there pretty tight. You can kind of push them down on the side. The green wires are antenna wire, so be careful with that also. Next, we're gonna hook up all of the high current cables into the box on the terminal lugs, along with the two power wires that feed the wireless receiver. So that's the next step. Okay, for the next part, I have found that it's easier if you wire the high current wires and everything into the box before you attach it to the motor, versus attaching it to the motor and then trying to attach everything once it's mounted in the vehicle. So go ahead, and I did the 3 bottom wires that will be fed to the winch. So again, connect those because they're on the bottom, it's easier. And at the ends, you might have to bend them up a little bit to get them to fit in the angle, but go ahead and get those down and attached and tightened up, and run them out the side. And then next we're going to attach the main power wire in. Okay, we have the box wired now. I got the main power up on the top terminal. This is the ground wire that comes out. All the wires are in. The 3 wires that feed to the winch are coming out. So when you go to put the lid on, so later on, you're going to mount it in the vehicle. There are 3 holes on the bottom that will go through, and then that's where you will screw it into place in the truck. But I will show that at a later time. But for now, the box with all the relocated electronics is ready to go, and then it'll be ready to go install in the vehicle when you get to that step. So I went over wiring the power box. Now I'm going to go ahead and just show how you would wire the motor here, even though you're going to need to do it once you start installing everything in the vehicle. But for now, I'm going to show you just how to do it here, and then later on I'll also show you once you have it dangling under the vehicle. So you've already moved everything earlier. You have the box all ready to go. So when you're ready to do it in the vehicle, this will be mounted in the vehicle, or at least ran in there. So what you want to make sure is you have the 2 nuts on the bottom here, so that way it raises it up some, and then we're going to attach the wires next. First thing to do would be the middle wire, which is the easiest way to keep track, is the middle wire will go to the middle terminal. So we're going to go ahead and attach that, and then I will go over the rest of the wires next. So I'm going to attach the middle wire. Here's where it's very important. The other ones are going to get reversed. So even though the box and the wires are facing this way, when it's originally mounted on the top, it'll come from this direction. So basically the easiest way to remember is just take the left side and it'll connect to the right, and then the right side will connect to the left. So basically just crisscross it when you go to install it in the vehicle, and then go ahead and tighten everything down that way, and then I'll go to the next step. Okay, so we have the power wires coming from the box to the motor. Remember to crisscross the 2 outsides, and then next we're going to mount the cover, the protective cover over the top. You're going to reuse the same torque screws from earlier that you removed. They came from this cover to hold everything down over the box or over the winch. So here we go. We have the finished wiring job here in the house, just to kind of show everything connects. You have the box, you have the cover on to protect the terminals. On the back side, it's the ground wire, but that's part of, or the neutral, that's part of later on once you do the install. Anyway, thank you very much. This was the video on the electronic wiring and relocation of the box. I hope it's pretty self-explanatory and easy to understand. Thank you.